Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. And today on the show, well, you guys are going to steer the show. I'm going to be going through the Lakers' final playoff roster. They finalized that ahead of their series against the Minnesota Timberwolves. I have a couple thoughts on that. Obviously, one or two major decisions that they made regarding the center spot that we have to talk about. But then after that, show's yours. I'm going to answer your questions, whether they come from the review section of iTunes, where we have one. I also asked for questions on Twitter, so I'll go ahead and dip into that. Got some great questions there from Twitter. And then from here in the live show, you guys can leave your questions there as well. Quick reminder, please hit that subscribe button if you guys are new here. As we head into the postseason and we get some new listeners and new viewers, I do request that you hit that subscribe button. At the very least, hit that like button. That also helps us with algorithm. And then if you guys are listening to this in the morning in its pod form, hit subscribe wherever it is that you get your pods from, preferably on Odyssey. And then tell your friends about the show. As we get into the postseason and the Lakers become more kind of water cooler talk, let them know, hey, I have this cool show that I listen to. It's with this rando guy who lives out in Texas and covers a team somehow from out there. But he has some people on there who we tend to like as well, and it's become this burgeoning little community. So let your friends know about that. Or if you have people who you really, really hate or think really, really hate you, tell them, look, the last thing that you could ever want them to do is to check out this Lakers show that we know about. All right, let's dive on in, though, starting with the Lakers playoff roster and a couple of the guys who were left off of it. So we'll just go through the names really quick. And our dude Jovan, our favorite beat reporter Jovan, supplied us with the list here. I'll move over this way so you guys can see my face. The Lakers 15-man playoff roster: Luka, Austin, Rui, LeBron, Jackson. Okay. Dorian, Gabe, Jared, Jordan, Dalton. Okay. Shake, Markieff, Maxey, Bronny, Len. All right. That is exactly the roster that the Lakers finished the season with. And you know, there was a lot of internal conversation around the idea of converting either Christian Koloko or Trey Jemison and bringing them into Alex Len's spot. But the final decision, you know, that happens to save a couple of bucks and doesn't piss off Len's agent, seeing as they convinced him to kind of renege on a at least well, it definitely was only verbal agreement that he might have had with Indiana. They wind up sticking with Len, sticking with Kleba, who was seen shooting after practice today. I would imagine we're going to get an update on him, whether that has to do with the first round or later in the postseason. We'll see. But yeah, at the very least, the you know, or basically the reason I'm told that they went with this group is because they didn't think Koloko or Jemison would play so long as Jackson was healthy. Now, if Jackson gets hurt, then obviously that puts them in a bind, but that's going to be the case anyway. And I would imagine, and I'm told that even if Jackson got hurt, the Lakers would just go extra small and just fully commit to centerless basketball and kind of carry out the postseason that way. Maybe you get some Len minutes. Maybe if Kleba gets a little healthier later in the postseason, maybe you lean on him a little bit. But for the most part, the center rotation here is actually going to be more Dorian Finney-Smith, Rui Hachimura, LeBron James, and then at the beginning of games, Jackson Hayes, and as the game goes on, a little bit less of him over the course of the the events that take place. I'm also, by the way, watching. It's off in the corner over there. Atlanta and Orlando are playing their play-in game, and it's so nice to head into these play-in games. I believe Golden State and Golden State and Memphis plays after this game. It's nice that we just kind of get to sit back, pour a glass of wine, watch these games, and get back to focusing on the Wolves. But anyway, as far as this the center situation goes, I honestly get it. You save a couple extra bucks in terms of cap money and luxury taxes, and if you wind up having to play Alex Len or Christian Koloko or Trey Jemison, that signals bigger problems anyway. So there you are. I do think if I was to complain a little bit, I would say that I just think Koloko is a better basketball player than Len at this point in their careers. I think Jemison brings some physicality that the Lakers might miss a little bit, but they really value Markieff Morris's voice in the locker room. That really stood out to me when I went and covered the team in the locker room before and after the game. Very vocal guy, somebody who has the ear of Luka, of LeBron, and therefore everybody else in that locker room. So I didn't think he was getting cut. They, I guess, could have cut Shake Milton, but as Eric Pincus and I talked about a few weeks back, Shake Milton is actually kind of a valuable asset heading into the offseason, given his non-guaranteed status, and given how precise some of these trades have to be financially. The Lakers made the decision to keep Shake Milton. And then outside of that, like, you aren't going to cut Bronny. You aren't going to cut Kleba because he has a year left on his contract beyond here this year. And outside of that, they already cut Cam Reddish, and they didn't have any viable options outside of him who wouldn't have had an impact either on the court or elsewhere in the organization. So they decided to stick with the roster that got them to the 3 seed, or the roster that they finished the season with the 3 seed with. I do want to say, though, the Lakers probably don't get to 50 wins without some of the input from Trey Jemison and from Christian Koloko. I do think the Lakers value both of those guys as kind of projects moving forward. It wouldn't surprise me if either were to continue in the organization moving forward in some capacity. But as far as this postseason run, they will be watching from afar. But yeah, kudos to Koloko and to Jemison and to Goodwin. And, it was a much more productive season from a two-way standpoint here for the Lakers. And, that's something that the Lakers are going to be trying to continue here moving forward. All right, enough dilly-dallying, enough rambling on my part about guys who are not going to play. Let's start talking about the guys who will. So Viva Exceptionalism writes from iTunes, and a reminder, the surest way to get your question or comment or topic covered here on the show is to leave it in the form of a 5-star review on iTunes, as Viva Exceptionalism did here. All right. So Anthony, still the most entertaining Lakers podcast there is. You're the best. Thanks, man. I have a few fun questions for you and maybe Harrison if you see this. One, if the Lakers win the championship this year or next, does Nico Harrison get a ring? You can't make me laugh like that. I'm nursing this cough and I'm like, number two, is Rob Pelinka a shoe-in for GM or executive of the year? 3, does Bronny step into the Gabe Vincent role next year? And if so, do Bronny jerseys sell LeBron jerseys, outsell LeBron jerseys next season? 4, over under on the Lakers trying to trade for Mark Williams this offseason, but at a cheaper price. 5, where does Austin place in the most improved player voting? 6, who's worse, Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, or Colin Cowherd? Have a great week. Viva exceptionalism. All right. So there's a lot of questions there, and I am going to separate them with the swish noise starting now. First and foremost, should Nico Harrison get a ring if the Lakers win a championship this year? Yes. No. Yes. No. Yes. Yeah. I think he obviously will not, being an executive for another team, but he'll always kind of, have a soft spot in this old cold heart of mine, for that trade. He and Rick Welts sat down with reporters in Dallas today. I don't know if you guys saw this, but they sat down with reporters today and didn't allow video, did allow audio recording, but those reporters are not apparently allowed to, or they were told not to play audio of the presser in any capacity. They limited the number of reporters who were able to sit down in this roundtable event with Rick Welts and Nico Harrison. And in that roundtable event, Rick Welts compared trading Luka Doncic to the Lakers for Anthony Davis. He compared that to trading Monte Ellis to, I think it was Milwaukee at the time. I forget where Ellis went, but trading him for Andrew Bogut. So I don't know who walks away most offended by that comparison. Is it Luka Doncic, who got compared to Monte Ellis? Is it Anthony Davis, who gets compared inherently here to Andrew Bogut? Is it everybody who hears this comparison because it is so clearly lacking in any context or logic? All of the above, I think, is the answer here. And it was so thoroughly out of touch. There were any assortment of wild quotes to come out of it. At one point, Nico Harrison said that he does not owe anything to Dirk Nowitzki, or that some of his decisions might piss off Dirk Nowitzki or the fans, but he still has to make those decisions nonetheless if he thinks that they are what's best for the Dallas Mavericks. All of this, everything from the decision to limit the number of media who can go, to not allowing this thing to be on video, to the quotes that came out of it, to this dude, Brad Townsend, who summarized that thing saying that Rick Welts actually had a good roundtable. All of it just makes zero sense whatsoever to me. And it's the kind of thing where I remember covering the Russell Westbrook trade. And the toughest thing through all of that was, well, there was two of them. First, from the get, because I hated the trade, being yelled at and having to stick by my guns and say, I don't like this trade. And then, ironically, the next difficult thing through that entire ordeal was being right. And what we tend to do when, especially in the year of our Lord 2025, if there's a polarizing subject and a swath of people are wrong about this subject, rather than be like, you know what, my bad, I'm sorry, yada, 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 it's okay, whatever, fuck it, move on. And there's no real interest in like learning the lessons from that situation. And that's essentially what we went through with the Russell Westbrook thing, where it was like this was a mistake at the time. I told you guys it was a mistake at the time. Talking to the Lakers here. We knew it was a mistake at the time. And then when it proved to be a mistake, it rather than everybody who was pro the Russell Westbrook trade coming to Jesus and saying like, yeah, man, I was wrong about that. How can we avoid being wrong like that again? It was like, no, stop talking about it already. The trade happened. We all got to move on. And it's like, no. We have to sit in this for at least a year. And it wound up being a couple of years that we had to sit in the muck that was the Russell Westbrook trade. And Dallas fans, I'm starting to see it where with some of my friends' content, it's like, all right, fine, whatever. The trade happened. We have to move on. And I think by and large, most people covering the Mavericks would say, yeah, I'd love to. But these morons keep on making me have to talk about this thing. It's been 73 days, I think I saw today. It took 73 days between press conferences. And in this case, it wasn't even a full press conference because we didn't see the whole thing. So the Mavericks initially made it impossible to not talk about it because, one, they just traded Luka Doncic, but on top of it, they were leaking every opportunity they got about how fat this guy is, about how this guy's a loser, he's this, he's that, and all this stuff. And even now, all of these months later, we're sitting here talking about this because the Mavericks still, to this day, are like, no, he's fat, he's a loser. We want to win with defense. Their defense got worse. It's wild how the Dallas Mavericks as an organization refuse to let anybody move on because they want everybody moving on to be on their terms. And that's just not how this works. When you fuck up to that extent, you don't get to dictate the terms anymore. When you mess up like that, you have to apologize. It's like, anybody who's been married or in a relationship or has just made a mistake before, you have to apologize and then accept whether or not the wronged entity accepts your apology, or if or when they decide to do so. And that's the problem that the Mavericks are having right now, is like, yeah, all right, we get it. We screwed up. Fine. Sorry. And Mavericks fans are like, fuck you, sorry. You don't get to live through this, guys. Nico Harrison, you don't get to continue to work through this. And he's like, no. I said sorry. We all should move on. And that's not how this works. And by continuing to try to dictate the terms of the apology or dictate the terms of righting the wrong, the Mavericks continue to put everybody through this. And I really, I went to Dallas and I truly feel for all of the Mavericks fans that I spoke to, whether it's the Uber drivers who took me to and from the building, whether it's the bartender who I sat there and talked to, and he said how his business has been impacted because nobody wants to go and watch Dallas Mavericks games anymore. Whether it's the people within the building who work for the Dallas Mavericks or working game ops who were sitting there saying like, yeah, we screwed that up. Luka's going to give it to us tonight, and we kind of deserve it. Everybody there was just this stink in the air. And part of the stink that's in the air is that there's this sentiment that Nico Harrison isn't going anywhere. The Jason Kidd isn't going anywhere. The Rick Welts, who compares trading Luka Doncic to the Warriors trading Monte Ellis, he's not going anywhere. So I don't know. I all of this is to say Nico doesn't get a ring. He doesn't get anything. He shouldn't continue to be employed, but he is. So here's hoping that the Lakers can maybe fleece him again and try to get Anthony Davis out of there. The next question that Viva Exceptionalism had is Rob Pelinka a shoe-in for GM/Executive of the Year? So this is a funny one, and I've talked about this before, but I'm going to stay on. I'm going to double down because there's this thing that's goes on whenever Rob does anything, and I look. I think part of it is objectively true that all of Rob's best moves just kind of landed in his lap, but you still have to execute the trade. You still have to get it across the finish line. And the fact that he did, like, he didn't win Executive of the year that he traded for Anthony Davis, Magic, and he didn't get it the year that LeBron James signed with the Lakers, and he's probably not going to get it here for trading for Luka Doncic because his peers, who are the ones who vote on this thing, are all jealous of the ways that he has landed that talent. There's a lot of momentum towards Sam Presti getting it. I don't really get it, to be completely honest. It's much of the same roster. And it's like, all right, you're going to hold it against Rob Pelinka for taking advantage of Nico Harrison, but you're not going to hold it against Sam Presti for taking advantage of the Bulls in the moment and trading for Alex Caruso without having to give up any picks. So it's like the point is to take advantage of the person that you're negotiating against. But if you're the Lakers, you can only do so to such an extent, and then it becomes just an outright fleece, and we can't actually credit you for doing this. So I don't know. I think Rob should win it. Does that mean I think he's the best executive in the league? No, I think he did the best job this year because it extends beyond the Luka trade. He hired JJ Redick. He traded for Dorian Finney-Smith, and then he made the Luka trade. He found Jordan Goodwin off of the scraps. That guy might be a playoff rotation player. So I think he had the best year of any executive in the NBA, and we'll see if the executives that he's competing against feel the same way. The next question here, does Bronny step into the Gabe Vincent role next year? And if so, do Bronny jerseys outsell LeBron jerseys next season? I don't think Bronny is going to be ready for that role next year. He's not a good enough shooter to step in to the important role that Gabe Vincent played. I would still say Bronny's probably another year or so away from meaningful, consistent NBA minutes. And that's fine. Like I actually think if a few years from now we look back on Bronny's career and we consider this like an extended education, like, you know, so he had his 1 year at USC, and then if we say that he basically interned for the Lakers this year, and then next year is his official rookie season, that year will probably be a pretty decent rookie season for him. Doesn't work like that because he played a minute in the NBA this year. But I think if you're doing the math on his career to that point, that's how I would probably do it. Overall, though, like I would say it was a successful intern year for Bronny. He made tangible steps forward in the G League. I legitimately improved over the course of the year in that style of play. And we'll see if he's able to translate that success into success at the NBA level next year. But overall, I don't really have many complaints over the Bronny James experience. I thought it was stupid how they handled it at the beginning of the year, where they tried to tell us that he very clearly, belonged on the court alongside his dad. No. You wanted the photo op. It was a photo op. And then you moved into developing Bronny over the course of the regular season, or the rest of the regular season. And that part of it, I think, went really well. I just didn't like being pissed on and told that it's rain in the moment at the beginning of the year. And then now we move on to what improvement he makes over the course of the offseason. He needs to get a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. He needs to become a much better shooter, and we'll see what he looks like next season. I think he should probably play in summer league again this year, and I somehow doubt he will, but still, I think he should. And then you kind of move on from there. But overall, I think Bronny had a very successful intern year for the Lakers. I'm going to take a quick swig of water because you guys can hear my voice kind of going. All right. So what I do with my water, because I hate how just regular water tastes, I make cucumber lime water. And sometimes if I'm in a rush, I forget to really mix it all together. And your first sip is just lime. And that's what that first sip was. Excellent. All right. I got to collect myself. All right, number 4, over under on the Lakers, or will the Lakers try to trade for Mark Williams this offseason, but at a cheaper price? I think that well's poisoned. I think that that bridge is pretty much burnt at this point. And I think if the Lakers are going to get a center this year, it'll have to come from a different team, or he'll have to come from a different team. I also think that the Lakers, like, not only the Lakers Hornets relationship aside, the Lakers clearly saw something in Mark Williams' medicals that gave them real pause and said, nope, not going there. And I don't think a few months in which Mark Williams played like 4 games changes that in any way whatsoever. So I think Mark Williams is pretty much off the Lakers' radar. And when the Lakers look to upgrade their center position, they will not be calling Charlotte about him. 5, where does Austin place in the most improved player voting? I have him first, to be completely honest. Now, Dyson Daniels deserves mention here. Christian Brown deserves mention here as well. I have Austin there personally because of the various and several roles he had to play over the course of the year. I don't have an actual vote. I voted for this thing that we do at Clutch Points, but I voted for Austin to win this year, and I don't think he's going to win. I really hope Cade Cunningham doesn't win it, because I don't want that to be what this award becomes personally. But yeah, Austin has improved every year that he's been in the league. And this year, especially at the beginning of the year, was asked to be the primary offensive initiator and the point of attack defender. And then he was asked, when they started Max Christie alongside him, Austin had to take on even more of a burden offensively, even though some of his defensive responsibilities were scaled back. And then they traded for Luka Doncic, first they traded D'Angelo Russell and removed that safety net from Austin. And then they traded for Luka Doncic, and he had to play a completely different brand of basketball. And at every step along the way, he had success. Now, it was to varying degrees. I didn't like him in the role that he was at the beginning of the year mostly because I don't think almost any player the only player who I would say fits that description is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and he's going to win MVP. So I would say, that first iteration of Austin was my least favorite, because I thought he was clearly stretched a little too thin with all of the responsibilities. But then over the course of the year, I thought they honed in on a role that makes a whole bunch of sense for him. And now I really think he is probably the swing player in this upcoming series. And if he plays up to his level, or the level that I know he can, I really don't know what Minnesota does with him. So, yeah, I would have voted for Austin for most improved player this year. Who's worse, Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless, or Colin Cowherd? I have Cowherd as the best of that group. Low bar, but I have him as the best of that group. It's funny. I have Skip second worst in that group. Mostly because I think he's obnoxious. I think he's detrimental. I think his takes are disingenuous, and I hate the role that he played in getting us to the point that we are right now in sports coverage. But I have Stephen A. Smith worst in that group because Stephen A. Smith basically gets to decide the way that the NBA is covered at ESPN. And I hate it. I hate it with every fiber of my being. The way that the NBA is covered and portrayed at ESPN specifically, and it has almost everything to do with Stephen A. Smith. And so long as that remains the case, I think he's the my least favorite person in sports media. Probably won't get me a job at ESPN anytime soon, but that's where I stand on Stephen A. Smith. I can't stand what he has done to conversations about the sport that I love. All right, let's go ahead and see if you guys have had any questions so far. Let's see. All right, I don't see. All right, so let's go with the questions on Twitter. I'm going to go in the order that I got them from. So Omar Rado at BogeyBurner15 writes, biggest concern going against Mini. My biggest concern is Minnesota's size up front. If Rudy Gobert, if Naz Reid, if Julius Randle are able to generate enough extra possessions for Anthony Edwards, for their shooters, the math on this series gets pretty tricky. On top of that, Minnesota's size. So the Lakers' offense is at its best when you see penetration, the defense collapsing, and they start up the blender, and you make a couple passes, swing passes, and eventually you wind up with a wide open three. And I think they can put Minnesota in a blender, but Minnesota is so big up front that they might just wall off the paint and make it really difficult for the Lakers to start that blender. And if that's how this plays out, that throws a giant wrench in the machine that is the Lakers offense. So just Minnesota being so big up front, and if the Lakers aren't able to punish them for the speed deficiency because of that size, I think they're in big trouble. All right, next one here at Le Dunk Dallas. How would Wenyen Gabriel and Stanley Johnson fit on this year's team? I don't think they would play. Although Wenyen, man, I really wish Wenyen, he started shooting 3-pointers right at the tail end of his Lakers tenure. And had he done that regularly and added that to his game, and it's so funny, I think we a lot of times take for granted how difficult it is to add a 3-point shot to a game. And so we never say, man, if only, like, pick a shooter. We'll say Steph, right? Man, if only Steph Curry could just start windmill dunking, add that athleticism to his game. Could you just imagine, vertical athleticism? Could you just imagine what kind of a player Steph Curry would be? And that's essentially what we're asking really athletic players to do when it comes to adding a three-point shot. It's just as hard for an athletic player to add a three-point shot that they are comfortable with, that they can start making on, like, if you entered the league not able to sink three-pointers, and then you're hoping to add a viable three-point shot to your game, that is just as difficult as somebody who enters the league at a severe athletic deficiency, trying to improve their athleticism over the course of their NBA career. And, um, still, we started to see it from Wenyen Gabriel. It was right there. I swear it was right there. He started shooting a couple of those corner three-pointers, and I was like, oh, but it happened so late and so infrequently that, by the, he left the Lakers, and I don't think he left. I mean, essentially he left the league altogether. He hasn't really been in the league since. And man, if he had just added that three-point shot a year or so sooner, I would imagine, I would venture to guess he'd still be in the NBA. Now, as far as Stanley Johnson, he's an interesting player. I will always believe in the physicality that he presents defensively. Really good rebounder too. But again, he can't shoot, and he wasn't very good at dribbling. He's just not. You have to. We're seeing it with Vando. You have to be absolutely like, Lou Dort levels or Alex Caruso levels or I'm blanking. Like, we're talking about the best defenders in the NBA. You have to be at that level if you are not a factor offensively. And unfortunately, with Jared Vanderbilt, with Stanley Johnson, and even there, by the way, even there, teams are still probably going to make the decision of, we'll play a slightly worse defender if that means they can knock down open jumpers. And essentially that's what we arrived at Stanley Johnson. Teams and organizations and the entire league got sick of waiting for this guy to consistently knock down an open jumper. It's like they got sick of waiting for Cam Reddish to knock down an open jumper. And, if not for this extension that he's on, I would probably venture to guess that Jared Vanderbilt was probably heading in that same direction. We're seeing with Ben Simmons, like, you have to be the best defender in the NBA at your position if you're a non-factor on offense. And then even there, teams might just decide, can we get 4/5 of that defense if it means a decent shot on the other end? And that's essentially how it played out for poor Stanley Johnson. I blame Mater Dei for that one. Mater Dei being such an incredible program in terms of success at the high school level, but not producing basically any NBA levels, like, players, let alone stars, but players with real sticking power. I don't think that program is doing everything it can for its players. And you look, at the end of the day, they're going to do what they see fit to continue succeeding at the high school level and keep the great players running through there. But if I were, the parent of an elite basketball prospect in Southern California, I don't know if I would send him or to Mater Dei. Let's go with, this is a great question. Tom Foolery at Fodacious writes, how do we keep Ant out of transition? I'm sure Finch will emphasize it since JJ will come up with creative ways to frustrate Ant in the half court. That is a phenomenal question. Thank you very much, Tom Foolery, which is a really funny thing to say out loud. But first and foremost, you gotta be smart with the basketball. You cannot turn the ball over a ton. You cannot allow Minnesota, who don't really turn teams over all that much anyway. They're pretty much middle of the road statistically when it comes to turnovers forced. You have to keep them out of transition by way of your own offense. That's where it's going to start. Secondly, when you shoot 3-pointers, whoever Anthony Edwards is guarding, you got to give him a little bump. You got to give him a little bump in transition and make sure that he doesn't get a running start. And if he goes down and rebounds the ball, you got to try to cut him off early, and everybody has to hustle back so that they can wall off the paint for him, because he does that thing. LeBron, I was listening to Pete and Darius. Darius did a good job. I'm sorry, my nose is killing me. But I was listening to Pete and Darius on LFR, and Darius did a really good job of explaining, the success that LeBron has in transition, and that Mac truck lane that he fills or just takes the ball down after he gets a rebound, and how that lane right down the middle of the court, right to the front of the rim. That's something that teams find almost impossible to deal with when LeBron gets a full head of steam. Ant likes to do a lot of the same stuff. Now, he's a lot more mobile. He's a lot more agile. He's just as explosive, if not more explosive at the rim, though. And he's also big and physical for his position. So whoever is guarding him, that player, if it's just a straight, shooting guard to shooting guard matchup, that's where Ant really tends to succeed. Fortunately, though, for the Lakers, they have a lot of positional size. So if Dorian or Rui or Vando, if he is guarding them, then those guys have a decent chance at just slowing him down long enough in transition so that they can get a little bit of help on the backside all the way at the rim by the time he gets there. But it starts with shot selection. It starts with valuing the ball, and if the Lakers do those things, that at least to a certain extent limits the damage that he can do in that aspect of the game. Matt Clark writes, how will the Lakers handle the size of the Timberwolves? What are the differences between California and Texas? Well, on that second one, the allergies out here are just so much worse. But all right, so the how will the Lakers handle the size of the Timberwolves? Well, it's so the Lakers, when they are rebounding at their best, they do this thing where if it looks like the other team is about to get a rebound, they'll tip it away from that player because they would rather have a loose ball than have the other team secure that rebound. And that's one thing that the Lakers are going to have to rely on a ton here is gang rebounding, and then being really effective in the tip game. So that's one way. The other thing is, just like we talked about with Anthony Edwards, a lot of the work that the Lakers are going to do to mitigate against the impact that Minnesota's size is going to have in the series, a lot of that work is going to take place on the other end of the court, where if you punish the Wolves for playing two big lineups by knocking down, first creating and then knocking down open jumpers, that forces their hand, that makes them go from two bigs to one. And that's a lot easier to deal with on the other end when it comes to securing defensive rebounds. Orlando's getting their, or Atlanta's getting their butts kicked. Orlando will be moving on to play Boston, I think. I don't know. I don't care about the Eastern Conference. Not until the second round of the playoffs. It's such a joke. But anyway, if the Lakers basically, I think Austin is going to have to play a big role in this. If the Lakers pull Minnesota's bigs out and they really attack Naz Reid and they really attack Rudy Gobert in space and they really attack Julius Randle in space, even if they don't get all the way to the basket, it's just about it's just about getting that whirlwind going and forcing Minnesota's slower players to have to rotate in on defense. If you allow the Goberts, the Nazes, the Randalls to be more stationary defenders, that's when Minnesota is at their best, because they have great athletes on the perimeter, and then they have a ton of size on the interior. And when they're functioning at their best, their perimeter guys are making it so that their interior guys, yeah, they rotate, but it's only to the rim. They funnel guys if they have to the rim, and at that point, Rudy Gobert knows exactly how to handle that kind of a situation. But if you go by those perimeter defenders, or if you set screens and you put the interior players out there on the exterior or on the perimeter, and you attack those guys and you get that whirlwind going, or you get that blender going, that's when Minnesota's defense really kind of implodes. So the quicker in possessions that the Lakers can compromise Minnesota's bigs offensively, and the more frequently that the Lakers can take advantage of those compromised defenses by knocking down open three-pointers, the better you do that, the less likely it is you have to deal with those guys on the defensive end. 3-level score, I believe. Honest question. Am I the only one who notices JJ's press conferences are more of a podcast? A lot of I in his answers, probably the NBA head coach that talks most about himself. I didn't sleep, for example. Not criticizing, just an observation. Well, here's the thing. He's a podcast. He's a podcaster. And podcasters podcast. So I also, though, don't necessarily think it's the worst thing. I like a relatable coach. I like a coach who is willing to communicate with the fans through those pressers to be able to explain the decisions they make. And, oftentimes that's one of those things that coaches tend to forget over the course of their careers. And I hope it's something that JJ continues to value and prioritize. But the better you are at communicating, the more doubt or a benefit of the doubt that you're going to get from fans. Because so like I was listening to The Watch, and they were talking to Noah Wiley, who's the star of The Pit, my favorite show of the year so far, new show of the year. Oh, yeah. And there's a character there who she's a doctor, and she goes home for the day, and Noah Wiley's character tells her, go home, turn off your phone, and call it a day. We'll see you tomorrow, recharge, and we'll see you tomorrow. And eventually there's an event at the hospital where it's the kind of thing that like you would have to crawl under a rock to avoid. And they caught a little bit of criticism um, for this doctor going home and having the most effective do not disturb function on her phone that has ever existed. And the guys on the watch asked Noah Wiley about it, and he explained why the show made that decision. And his explanation was, it was removing another one of those stabilizing forces that the main character of the show would rely on to eventually have remove all of that armor from him, so you see him at his rawest there at the end of the season or later in the season. And I still think it was maybe not the best executed, but I'm willing to go there with the show because of the explanation for it, because they were thinking about this other thing and they were trying to find a way to get there. And with JJ, he's going to do stuff that we disagree with. He's going to not trust players that we wish he would trust, like Christian Coloco, for example. But if he explains kind of his ideology and his approach to the sport, and he discusses openly and transparently the things that he prioritizes, when he makes those decisions, we can see how much thought goes into them. And we can, because he showed us his work, it's like, okay, I don't necessarily agree, but I get it. And yeah, like he does handle those situations differently from everybody else. And it's a good note to make. Because all of those eyes in the press conference, they eventually might give way to ego, and we'll see how that goes over the years. But for now, I'm taking them as all of those eyes that are in his explanations as important context. Anything to get away from like the way that Ham handled him, like anything but that. All right, George Santiago writes, at what point, performance-wise, will you no longer pay LeBron James $50 million a year? So I saw this thing, maybe it was last week or the week before, and it was basically making the point that LeBron had one of the worst contracts in the year in terms of production per dollar or whatever it was. And I don't know. I think he has a real case to be made to be first or second all NBA, first or second team all NBA. I think he deserves a ton of credit for the way that he has handled the Luka thing, both on and off the court. And I think he was still a $50 million player this year. Now, I understand this is the first year in however many years that he didn't get to 25 points a game, and his scoring since Luka came over has dipped considerably, and it is very inconsistent. But I would still say, now we'll see what kind of a pay cut he's interested in taking this upcoming offseason if he opts out. But if he's at or near 50 million bucks a year, I actually think there's a really good chance he'll live up to that contract next year, because he'll have a whole offseason to figure out how to mesh with Luka, how to fulfill his role, what he needs to do with his body to play that style of basketball, all of that good stuff. And look, I just think with LeBron, it's he's such a chameleon that it becomes almost impossible to define what his performance is or should be. And I don't know. I have a lot of patience for my money, the best dude who's ever stepped foot on a basketball court. All right, last question here comes from Tyler Edsel, who writes, where should AD request a trade to, or is the correct answer just anywhere but here? So I talked to a bunch of people when I went there to that game, a lot of media people, and there was this sentiment that AD is going to be like okay with being in Dallas because there's no pressure. I really disagree. Um I don't know how well he's going to handle this moving forward. Being basically the face of the Luka trade that sticks around outside of Nico and outside of I think Jason Kidd to a lesser extent. But I don't know. I just don't think Dallas is a fully functional operation. And I just think they are so inept and so incompetent. And I like Anthony Davis as a dude, as a player, so much that I don't want him anywhere near there. So I hope that this upcoming offseason, he kind of takes a look around and goes, I don't know, guys. Um, and maybe he won't. He's a very low guy. He's very self-aware of how people talk about him on the internet or on, in national analysis and stuff like that. But end of the day, I just don't think that this is a winning situation for him. There's no winning here. He's always going to be known as he was getting heckled at the line of a game at home. Like he's always going to be the guy who they traded Luka for. And the sooner he gets away from that situation and the sooner that he can get away from the fans, also I think an important step in this whole thing, if he is able to get away from there, I think he should probably come out and talk about what this situation has been like for him and just say how difficult it's been to be like, look, man, I didn't ask anybody to trade me for Luka. I didn't ask Dallas to trade Luka for me. Like it just, I was the guy that they brought in. I was the guy that Nico convinced himself to trade for. And I'm trying to make the best of the situation, but there is no best of this situation. So I would love it if the Lakers could somehow bring AD back. I don't think that's possible. I would love it if he were to be able to go back to like Chicago and play, a little closer to home. That would be cool. Keep him the fuck away from Golden State, please. I do not need to see Anthony Davis with Steph as a floor spacer. No, thank you. I'd prefer that he go east, and maybe go to where would he go? Maybe Miami. I could maybe see him functioning in Miami. But yeah, I just that whole situation is just so brutal for him. There's no making that work, and the longer that he tries, I think the worse that's going to go. So, yeah, get 80. Zero chance whatsoever that you're watching this, but just get yourself out of that situation. All right, let's check the let's check the comments here. Yeah, I think we're good. All right. So how effective is Luka going to be against Minnesota? That's a good question. I still think he'll be really effective. So the thing that Minnesota has, they have a bunch of pesky defenders. You have somebody like Dante DiVincenzo, who I think will do a very good job or can do a very good job guarding, say, Austin Reeves. They have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who against most guys is an incredibly effective point of attack defender. They have Anthony Edwards, who by superstar standards is one of the best perimeter defenders in the sport. The problem with all of Jaden McDaniels, also one of the best perimeter defenders in the sport. But the problem with all of those guys, they're a little light, little, uh, not as much in the back pocket. I'm not talking about money. And LeBron is huge. Luka is huge. And I know it's kind of difficult to basically post up guys when you have interior defenders or interior helpers like Rudy and like Naz and like Julius. But if you can get those guys in the pinch post, or if you're just able to bully them in a way that doesn't allow them to muck up the Lakers offense, then you're then you're making it really difficult for Minnesota to operate in the way that they needed to operate over the course of the year. On top of that, if you're able to force switches to where Naz Reid is guarding on the perimeter, or Rudy Gobert is guarding on the perimeter, or Julius Randle is guarding on the perimeter, that's where Luka is really going to play well. So yeah, I think Luka is going to have a big series. I think Austin is poised to have a really big series. I'm really curious what kind of series LeBron has in this one. If he kind of focuses more on defense and helping the Lakers get out in transition, or limiting the number of possessions that the Timberwolves have. But Luka played really, really well against them last year in the Western Conference Finals. And I would imagine you're going to get a lot of the same stuff here from Luka in this series. All right. That is it, I think. Yeah, Hawks went down. They lost. Now we wrap up here just in time to enjoy Warriors Grizzlies, which is going to be a knockdown drag out game. Cannot wait for this one. I'm going to wait for the end of it to record the lowdown, just so that's another thing that we can maybe talk about. And yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. About 1,000 people in here right now. Thank you everybody for that amount of the support. So here's the plan for the rest of the week. I'm going to go ahead and give away the names of the guests. I'm going to risk the jinx. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to record. Now, I'm not going to air it right away. It'll air on Friday, but I'm going to record a conversation with John Krasinski, who covers, well, all of Minnesota sports incredibly well, but specifically the Timberwolves incredibly well. He has been on the show a couple times before. You guys have tended to like him. So we're going to record the interview tomorrow morning and then run it Friday as the bonus episode this week. And then tomorrow afternoon, I am going to record with Pete. That will be live. We'll record that one live. You aren't going to want to miss that one. It'll be during your lunch breaks, or if it's not during your lunch breaks, just pretend you're working and listen to us in the meantime. And then on Thursday, Jovan is going to stop by, and we'll look back on the season and then look ahead to the series and look ahead to the rest of the playoffs and maybe a little bit of off-season talk as well. So a ton of great stuff here lined up for you for the rest of the week. And then Saturday is the game. And the plan is to be live after that game. I believe I'll be home. So until then, and until all of that good stuff, I'm Anthony Irwin saying, have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's. Who are we rooting for? I think I'm rooting for Memphis. Go Memphis Grizzlies, and I'll talk to you guys